Now, this is perhaps, as some people say, the beginning of a new Cold War in Europe. If that is the case, it is very strange indeed, because not a single shot has been fired yet, and the stakes are so high for what could easily turn out to be not just a national but a regional conflict. Now, just to keep you up to date with the various developments today, they have been rather conflicting. For instance, there was a report about 20 minutes ago that the commander of the Russian fleet in the Black Sea had issued an ultimatum to Ukrainian forces in Crimea to stand down, surrender and hand over their weapons by 3 a.m. this morning, or there would be a military assault. That was then retracted by Moscow. At the same time, you've had a flurry of diplomatic activity in this city with William Hague, the Foreign Secretary here. John Kerry, the US Secretary of State, perhaps bringing with him the threat of sanctions, is due to arrive tomorrow. So an awful lot going on the streets behind me. Ordinary Ukrainians have been lining up in such numbers at the various military recruiting stations that some of them have apparently had to be turned back. So a lot of activity and a lot of anxiety here in the Ukrainian capital, as I found out myself. Europe faces its most serious crisis since the end of the Cold War. And here on Independence Square, you can feel the weight of that moment. On people's faces, in the leaden way they move. Even the weather has obliged. In theory, this revolution was always about East versus West, Russia versus Europe, with Ukraine caught in the middle. But in practice, few expected their country to be on the carving table quite so soon. I've never seen the mood in the square this subdued. These people had only just won the first round of their revolution, and now they're having to fight round two against Russia. And of course they know that their weapons of choice, burning tires, passion, determination, organization, all those things that helped them to get rid of President Yanukovych, are really not much use against Vladimir Putin and the Russian army. The Russian government has said that flags like this one, first used when Ukrainian nationalists collaborated with Hitler against Stalin, prove that neo-Nazis are now running the show here. That's why they have to protect their fellow Russians in Crimea and elsewhere. But to people here, that is a fabricated pretext that insults the memory of the innocent who were gunned down 10 days ago. To them, Putin is less Vlad the Protector than Vlad the Impaler.
I had plans to have a family, and actually I had plans for this year, my job plans. And right now I see that the man, just one man from Russia is trying
Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, is trying to affect my plans.
Also here today, the Foreign Secretary William Hague, laying flowers at the barricades for the fallen. Britain has been slow to get involved, but now the government is echoing America's call for possible sanctions against Russia.
Our interest in the United Kingdom is in a free, democratic, stable and prosperous Ukraine, able to make its own decisions without outside interference and without duress from other countries.
But what to do about it? How to restrain Vladimir Putin without the overt threat or possibility of military intervention? That is the question vexing this freshly minted government. We caught up with the new Prime Minister, less than a week in office. So what would you like to see the outside world do to help your country?
To contain Russian troops and to contain Russia. And to make...
Go on, sorry.
And to make Russia a country which sticks to its bilateral obligations.
Is this an occupation of your country where we stand at the moment?
For today, Russia invaded a part of Ukraine, which is Crimea.
What about military resistance? What about using military resistance?
It's crystal clear that Russia, as a nuclear power, has more strength rather than Ukrainian army. But despite this, any efforts of Russia to disarm Ukrainian military were not successful.
Later, in the quiet surroundings of his brand new office, I sat down with Ukraine's brand new foreign minister.
We will not give up the Crimea.
You won't give up the Crimea?
No. We want to keep the integrity of Ukraine, and we have a support from all around the world to keep the Ukrainian territorial integrity. But at the moment, you don't control Crimea. They do.
So how will you change that situation?
This is the aggression. This is the real situation. But how we will change the situation, the time will show very soon.
There's been a lot of mobilization in the city. People are being turned away from army posts because they want to sign up and fight.
And I'm very glad that Russian-speaking people do this in eastern Ukraine.
That was my next question. So the eastern Ukraine, are you afraid that the Russians will do in eastern Ukraine what they've done in Crimea?
They will try.
You're certain of that?
I think so.
So for now, the future of war and peace in a part of Europe hinges on a hope as wispy as the smoke over Maidan, that Vladimir Putin will see sense and want to avoid isolation from the international community. Not for a long time has second-guessing felt this uncomfortable. Now, of course, it's important to remember that Vladimir Putin and Russia started this military action because they are protecting, as they say, the rights of their citizens living in this country, especially in Crimea, but also of Ukrainians who are very pro-Russian, speak Russian as a first language, and consider themselves a Russian ethnic minority in this country. And again, in that vein, today there were protests in eastern Ukraine, in a place called Donetsk, but also in southern Ukraine, in Odessa, against the new government here in Kiev and very much for the activities launched by Vladimir Putin. The question is, how genuine are these protests, and have they been used by Russia as a pretext to launch what many people here regard as an invasion of their country? So understanding not just what Vladimir Putin wants, but how far he is prepared to go, possibly incurring not just the wrath, but more of the international community, feeling isolated on the international stage just a week after a fairly glorious closing ceremony of the Winter Olympics in Sochi. That is indeed the main issue at hand here, and it is a very tough question that no diplomat you talk to, or no government official here has an easy answer to. Much of the focus is now on the next 24 hours of what exactly will happen on the Crimean Peninsula, in Crimea, where, of course, this whole action started a few days ago, and where our international editor, Lindsay Hilsum, has been for the last week. Over to you, Lindsay.